Alright, let's break down the forehand drive. Establishing the correct technical framework is a common struggle for amateur players. An incorrect framework is the primary reason for inconsistent and inaccurate forehand shots. You need to understand that once you establish a solid framework, your progress will accelerate significantly. Avoid the common trap of playing matches with improper technique, only to realize later that you need to go back and correct your fundamentals. Correcting those ingrained bad habits is a much more difficult and lengthy process. This is why it's crucial to prioritize building a solid technical foundation from the start. Incorrect technique often leads to injuries. Shoulder pain indicates tension, elbow pain means you're forcing the shot with your elbow, and back pain suggests you're leaning back. Similarly, knee pain is a clear sign that you're jumping instead of staying low. My advice is to focus on mastering the framework before jumping into competitive matches. Once your framework is solid, you'll be able to apply your technique in a match situation much more effectively. I often hear players say, "My technique feels good in practice, but it falls apart in a match." That's because you've only practiced a stationary stroke. You haven't trained to maintain that framework while moving. In a real match, the ball is unpredictable. When your opponent moves you around the table, your form breaks down. Therefore, you must incorporate footwork drills, like side-to-side movement and random half-table drills, into your training. The key question is, how do you maintain the stability of your stroke while you are moving? Most amateur players find their stroke becomes unstable and their form breaks down as soon as footwork is involved. So, let's focus on how to move without letting your technique fall apart. Half-table footwork is one of the most demanding skills to master. If your movement is unstable, your form will break down instantly. First, for half-table movement, you must learn to use small side shuffle steps. Avoid moving just your left foot to the left or just your right foot to the right. That is incorrect footwork. Moving one foot at a time like that will cause your form to break down. So, you must learn to keep your body structure compact and stable throughout the movement. To do this, both feet need to move together in small, simultaneous steps. This is two-foot movement. Watch my footwork carefully, never move just one foot. Always move both feet together. Your footwork should be a glide close to the ground, with absolutely no vertical bounce or change in height. This is one of the most critical aspects to focus on. The ability to execute continuous attacks comes from maintaining a stable center of gravity, anchored by your legs. Keep your feet planted firmly and your knees bent and engaged, then initiate your footwork from this stable base. Now, let's address the question of lifting your heels. Realistically, you can't sustain a rally with your heels completely off the ground. The key is to have your weight on the balls of your feet. Your heels shouldn't be fully lifted off the ground. That stance is impossible to maintain. If you start with your heels up, your body will be unstable and your legs won't be able to support you. So, your focus should be on keeping your feet grounded and maintaining a stable base. For adult players especially, keeping your heels completely lifted is simply not practical. The correct way is to keep your weight biased towards the balls of your feet, with your heels just lightly touching or slightly off the ground. This ensures a stable center of gravity. Second question, does the forehand drive involve a weight transfer? For the drive, your backswing should be initiated by a small body turn. However, the main rotation comes from your right hip as you drive forward into the ball. Pay close attention to my body position and see if this weight transfer looks correct. The forehand drive is not a large weight shift from the right foot to the left. That's an outdated technique, and it's too slow for the modern game. The first demonstration I showed you is correct. The movement is small and compact, that's the entire framework. You only need a slight rotation. If you watch professional players, you'll see they don't use a large weight shift either. The common mistake for amateurs is either being flat-footed or using excessively large, uncontrolled movements, losing that crucial body compactness. So for your entire forehand framework, you must keep your body movements compact. All you need is a small rotation back and a rotation forward. That's it. Don't pivot on the balls of your feet. Keep your legs stable, your center of gravity low, and use your core to drive the rotation. This is the essence of the forehand drive framework. It doesn't require a large rotation. When you're playing close to the table, a large rotation will get you jammed by the ball's speed. The body rotation is very small, just this much. This is all you need. This same principle applies to your loop. Many players generate power sideways because their body rotation is too large. Power should be directed forward. Only by rotating forward can you keep your body structure stable, not collapsing to the left. With the forehand drive, many players transfer their body sideways, meaning the power is never truly transmitted into the ball. Now, let's look at the hands. Why does your hit lack power and always go upwards? It's because during the backswing for your forehand drive, you aren't positioning the racket behind the ball. Your racket is always underneath it. This means you are contacting the ball on an upward swing, which is why your shot always has some brushing motion, no matter how hard you hit. Even if your wrist is fixed, there is still an element of brushing. However, if you can generate power from behind the ball and forward, your shot will have much more quality. For example, my backswing is behind the ball, and I hit through the front of the ball. Only then can you generate true force transfer, which is what we call a pure hit or impact. Most amateurs don't bend their knees enough and stand too tall, so their racket is naturally higher than the ball. From this position, you are forced to drop your forearm and swing upwards, which automatically creates a brushing motion. While this isn't a critical error, it will limit the speed and impact quality of your shot. When you brush the ball, it's difficult to maintain a consistent rally because the trajectory will be too high. The main issue is that when you want to loop or drive the ball, your shot will lack sufficient impact. You'll always be brushing the ball with no feeling of solid contact. And even if you don't use a pure hit in matches, a high-level loop is always about adjusting the ratio of impact to friction. If you can't create impact, your loop will never be fast. The quality of your ball will always be low, so you need to master this skill. So how can we execute a pure forehand drive with solid impact? First, when I lower my center of gravity, my contact point is around my lower abdomen, and my height is 165 centimeters. He is 174 centimeters, and when he gets into his stance, his contact point is also around his lower abdomen, with only a slight difference. However, many amateur players, especially taller ones, have a contact point down by their legs. If your contact point is that low, a high racket position necessitates dropping the forearm, which then generates a low to high brushing action on the ball. This really comes down to an issue with your stance. Regarding your lower body, if you're tall, you need to bend your knees more. You can't use the same leg angle as a shorter person. So, make sure you get your stance even lower. When your base is lower, even if your upper body is tall, you can position your hand correctly to find the right contact point. Most of these problems stem from standing up too straight. For a forehand drive, your racket can be slightly lower than the ball, but don't exaggerate it. Many amateurs drop their racket far too low. Only by ensuring your backswing is behind the ball can you experience that pure, forward-hitting sensation. Second, let's talk about the distance from your body. I'll show two versions. Pay attention to my elbow and tell me which one is correct. This is the first one, and this is the second one. That's right, the first one is correct. Now let's analyze why the second one is wrong, as many players make this mistake. During the stroke, the elbow should be down, allowing you to use your forearm to accelerate forward. The error occurs because your elbow is slightly flared out and high. When your elbow is high, you tend to lift upwards on contact, and more importantly, you will lead with your elbow and push the ball. This is the classic, pulling the elbow back and pushing with the elbow error. Even if your motion is small now, it will become obvious when you try to add power. Pulling the elbow back and pushing with it are the most common errors you'll see. Think about it, if your elbow is down, you physically can't pull it back. Even if you try, the resulting stroke is still fundamentally correct. Just like as professionals, my backswing is here, and my forward stroke is here. Your key problem is that your elbow is raised, causing your arm to swing back and forth like a pendulum. Now, if my elbow stays pointed down the whole time, my motion is correct. There's nothing wrong with it. A professional player just integrates their body rotation, but the elbow mechanics remain correct. The amateur's mistake is that during the backswing, the elbow is high and points backwards. This position also makes it very easy to hit the ball into the net. Many players, when the ball comes, have an incorrect elbow position in the backswing, compounding the error. As a result, they either hit the ball into the net or end up pushing it upwards. So please remember this subtle but crucial point: your elbow must stay down. The elbow is down on the backswing, and it remains down through the forward motion. Look at this motion. Doesn't it look technically sound? If you want your stroke to look like this, do as I say. Observe my elbow position closely. Tennis elbow often develops because the elbow joint is unstable and moves around during the power phase of the stroke. Next, let's look at the wrist. Watch why my second attempt is an error when I try to add power. This is the first way. This is the second. It's a very small change. Watch closely. Here's the first way. And here's the second way. You can see it now, right? I used my wrist. For amateur players, at the point of impact when you want to hit the ball solidly, you absolutely cannot allow the racket to wobble. Even a tiny bit of movement is enough to send the ball out. Watch closely. When I want to generate power, the racket face must be fixed. The same goes for looping, the racket angle must be stable through contact. It cannot be wobbly like this. The slightest wobble and you lose all control. So, the problem lies in our grip. Your thumb and index finger, and this applies to penhold as well, must secure the racket. You must prevent it from moving. This means keeping them relaxed but firm against the blade, not squeezing it tightly. Only with a stable grip can I ensure that during high-speed, powerful shots, the racket face does not move at impact. If it doesn't move, I can hit the ball solidly. You might feel your wrist is still, but the slight wobble comes from looseness in your fingers. Secondly, let's talk about the finger placement for the shakehand grip. Is this grip correct? It's incorrect, but many amateur players hold the racket exactly like this. Holding the racket like that guarantees your wrist will bend up on the backswing. And that's what leads to this faulty swing. You must remember to place your index finger lower on the rubber. With the finger lower, when you drop your wrist for a loop against backspin, you can get the racket head pointing down to brush the ball. This brushing action relies on your fingers. When your finger is in the correct position, it must be stable. If it moves around, the racket will be unstable. My brushing motion comes from pressing at this point and driving forward. If the grip is loose and unstable, you can't grip the ball. This applies to both drives and loops. The position of the index finger for backspin loops is just as important. And if your backswing is already wrong like this, the contact will be even worse. When transitioning from forehand to backhand, the grip should not change at all. My index finger does not move. Now for the thumb. The two most important fingers are the index finger and the thumb. For my forehand, my thumb rests diagonally on the blade. I do this because during the forward power transfer, if my thumb doesn't provide support, the space in my grip is empty when I generate force. This creates a problem, and it's the same for penhold. For your forehand power transfer, the back three fingers are crucial. If your thumb and index finger don't pinch the racket, many penholders end up with an open racket face on contact. This is because the fingers are not providing enough forward pressure. It's like a force from behind is pushing the racket open because your front fingers aren't securing it. At the last moment, the racket will have that slight, unintentional wobble. If I put my thumb on the handle like this, as soon as I try to use power on my forehand, my thumb can't provide support, and I lose control of the racket face. Therefore, the thumb is crucial for force transmission. It must secure the racket so that as power comes from the back, the front of the grip remains stable. When the ball arrives, these two fingers must have control of the racket. Watch, keep the fingers stable, keep the elbow fixed, and your entire framework will be very solid.